Hello humans, it's just Martine and welcome to the second episode of Jokes on Me. Jokes on Me is a TBR game created by my bestie, Bailey from Is Bailey Reading. I'm playing it in the month of November. Let's get into our second round of card flips.
The game piece today is a Tootsie Roll. Right, here we go. A 3, which means do all 3 prompts. Last time we started on random letter, so first on Instagram, book of the month, and other TBR game. A 4, which is move backwards. So 1, 2, 3, 4, start a series. And a Queen, which is buy a book.
So this one gave us 4 prompted books to read, then I have to buy a book, and then I have my choice read. Here's what happened when I looked on Instagram. Immediately, my friend Ashley's slideshow of her reading month in September came up, and the very first one was this lantern book, which she DNF'd, but my library had it, so it looks like that's what we're reading. Luckily, she DNF'd this because it was like too YA and cheesy for her, but I love YA and cheesy, so I'm hoping for better things than her. For Book of the Month, I don't receive Book of the Month books, so I just went and looked at all the books that Book of the Month has ever selected in the past, found one that was available on my library app and decided to read it. And so for this, I'm reading Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney. I think this is my first Alice Feeney book too. For other TBR game, since I already had to use Amy's Game of Bookish Life in my last video, I decided to stay right there and use the first prompt that she spun, which was representation from South America. And so for that, I'm going to be reading The Dreamer, which is, I think, a middle grade graphic novel set in Chile. I'm excited about that. And then I'll be starting a series, probably Wool by Hugh Howey, which I do have a physical copy of, but it's way up there, so I'm not gonna get it right now. Then I have to buy a book and read a My Choice book. So let's get to reading. I finished reading When You Wish Upon a Lantern and I really liked it. It was cute, 4 stars. It's a typical YA contemporary. We're following this girl and she lives in Chinatown and her family owns this shop. It has lots of things, but mainly they are responsible for selling lanterns and putting on festivals where people set off those wish lanterns. Her grandma has recently passed away. She was very close to her grandma and they used to secretly grant the community's wishes together. She has been in love with her next door neighbor, Kai, for a very long time, but based on a really embarrassing recent incident, they haven't spoken lately. They start speaking again at the beginning of this and we kind of watch their friendship waffle between normal friendship and something more, and it was just super cute. I liked it. So rich in culture. 2 really cute, wholesome characters who I really loved. Just some funny situations. I just liked it. Thank you to Ashley for your recommendation of this book that you DNF'd. It was right up my alley. Howdy, I just finished reading Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney, and I'm giving it 3.5 stars. It was like a fun thriller, but nothing too special. I mean, the twist at the end was fun, but I saw some of the twists coming. Not all of them, but some of them. But yeah, overall, I had a really good time with this. In this one, we're following Daisy Darker, and she was born with a heart condition, which plays like a really important part in the story, and her family is meeting up for her Nana's 80th birthday. Her Nana lives at this place called Sea Glass. It's on this like remote island. You can only get to when the tide is down, and so everybody arrives and then the tide goes up. All of a sudden, people start dying. It's very and then there were none. So much so that it does reference and then there were none at one point. A good time. Nothing much to say about it though. So moving on. For other TBR game, I got the prompt to read a book with South American representation, so I read The Dreamer. It's kind of, I don't know how to describe it. It's not a graphic novel, but there are visual parts of the story. The point is that it's this fictionalized version of a poet's life. His name's Pablo Nunez. He's like a very famous poet. Not that I'd ever heard of him before, but so this was written by other people based on the biographies about him, and I'm giving it 3.5 stars. I had trouble getting into it in the beginning, but by the end, I like really cared about the characters. That's what redeemed it. Like I just had a hard time getting to know them in the beginning, especially with the style, because it's like interspersed with pictures, like drawings, and then also interspersed with like pieces of poetry. So it's just, it broke up the story, and it's not an entirely linear story either, which is fine, but it just made it hard to connect to the characters initially. But I finished that. For the prompt to start a series, I read Wool by Hugh Howey, which I'm giving 5 stars. I'm kind of waffling on this. I'm like, is it a 4.5? But I just think I haven't read a dystopian book in so long that was what I wanted it to be. This gave me those feelings. Like, it wasn't overly cheesy. It was good. The world was unique. I was invested in the characters. I was surprised at every turn. Even at the point in the story when I thought there would be no more surprises, there were. So I just really loved the experience of reading this book, and I'm like excited to read the next books in this trilogy. So much so that like I already put a hold on the second one. I would have borrowed it immediately if it had been available, but it was not. So again, and this one is like a dystopian book. It's set, I guess we don't know what year it's set in, but I'm assuming it's supposed to be the future, and we're in this silo, which is basically this big building that's like mainly underground, has this whole society. It's more of a like vertical society than a horizontal society. And recently there have been some people who've been sent out for cleaning, which basically means they're killed. So they're sent out of the silo because they're starting to discover old secrets that some people don't want known because they could cause problems. But lo and behold, it causes problems anyway because one person is killed for it. So then another person is like, why did they get killed for this? So they look into it, then they figure it out. They get killed for it, etc., etc. So then it grows into a problem. I just thought this was such an interesting book. It's so hard to tell you why this was so good to me. I have a hard time staying devoted to a 500-page book, and I had to put this down this past weekend for my 12 TBRs reading vlog, and I was actively sad about it. Like, I wish I could have finished it this past weekend because I was just invested. I don't know, it's just so good. I'm glad I started this series because recently I haven't started a lot of series that I'm like super excited about. I'm super excited about this one. Hooray. This past weekend, I went to visit a friend, and she was going to Barnes & Noble to pick up a book that she needed for something. And so I was like, while we're at Barnes & Noble, I'm going to have you do me a favor and pick the books that I'm going to buy for this video, because I flipped a card, I get to buy a book. What book am I going to buy? I get really overwhelmed when I go to buy, especially full price books, because I'm like, there are so many options. I want to read them all. So generally, I love telling somebody, you're going to pick a book for me. Pick anything. And specifically the prompt that I gave to this friend is, in almost every way, our reading tastes align perfectly. The only exception is that she loves fantasy and I don't really. And so I was like, pick me a fantasy book that you, knowing what I love about books, and you, knowing fantasy, think is a fantasy book I will love. And she waffled for a bit between a couple of options, but then she saw this one and she was like, I changed all of my answers. This is the one you need to read. And so I bought The Lies of Locke Lamora. It is kind of chunky. It doesn't look that big, but it's over 700 pages. So thanks to her for that. I guess that means I got some bang for my buck because it was only $9. I haven't read it yet, obviously, because I just bought it, but I do think it's an excellent pick because I do know that there is a con artist involved, and I love a con in books. So I think maybe she made a good choice, but we'll have to see at some point in the future. Not right now because I have too many books to read, but yay, new book. Hello! This weekend I finished reading Dance Upon the Air by Nora Roberts, which is the Shelf This book club pick for the month of November, and also my choice book for this video. I'm giving it 3 stars. It was just mid. That's not true. The atmosphere was impeccable. Everything else was mid. In this one, we're following this woman and she has had some troubles in her past, so much so that she like faked her own death and she has run away. And she moves to this new island, and the island is everything. It's Three Sisters Island. It's great. It's like a cozy small beach town place. And she kind of gets involved in the life there in the island. And there's just a lot happening in this book. It's like partially a romance. So she falls for this dude who's there, which is not great because she's still technically married to the person she ran away from. And the person that she's falling in love with here is the sheriff, and also is like a less than mid character, like didn't love him at all. And then there's also a bunch of magic going on because there's this weird, I wouldn't call it a prophecy, but kind of like a prophecy about these 3 people with powers uniting together. She moves to this place and one of the people there is like, you're the 3rd. And I'm like, how did you know? So yeah, just a lot happening. Honestly, the 3 is driven up by the atmosphere, which was like a 10 out of 10 atmosphere for me of the island, and then everything else dragged it down. That's on that. But if I finished that book, it means I finished this episode. So for the prompt of first on Instagram, I read When You Wish Upon a Lantern and gave that 4 stars. I read a book of the month book, Daisy Darker, which I gave, was a 3 or 3.5, something like that. For the other TBR game, prompt. It was to read a book with South American representation, and for that I read The Dreamer, which I forget, was that like a 3-star? Something around there. This is a terrible wrap up. For the prompt of Start a Series, I read Wool by Hugh Howey. I gave it 5 stars. I bought The Lies of Locke Lamora for my buy a book prompt. And then for my choice, I read Dance Upon the Air by Nora Roberts and gave it 3 stars. So this episode is done. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up and comment down below. I had a 5-star in this video. Do any of these books sound like they have 5-star potential for you? And subscribe for more reading, writing, and college lifestyle content. And until next time, bye humans, bye!